There's been a lot of talk about DIY and how you guys can avail yourself of DIY resources, and there are many ways to go in that regard, and many resources that we all have. But in talking about this, it became apparent that your faculty has done many of the things that that you're going to look to do, whether it's making and releasing a record, managing an artist, managing a tour, making a film, launching a website, any number of the various and manifold permutations of your music industry exploits have been handled by the people on this stage. And one of the benefits to this program is that you have access to us. Many of you know that you can find one of us or any of us at any given time. So the idea for this evening's forum is for each of us to talk a little bit about the things that that we do, and to field questions from you guys about what we're good for, how we can be of service to you, some of the projects that you're trying to get done, and some of the ideas that we may have to help you get those projects done. So to begin, I'll start nearest my left, Mr. Jim Gabor. Jim, would you like to introduce yourself to the kids and talk a little bit about some of the things that you've made happen under your own steam?
I don't do dongles.
You'll do dongles.
I'll do dongles. Anything for a buck. I got into film as a frustrated musician. I was such a crappy bass player that they would turn me all the way down. Everybody else would turn up. And but because I booked the band, they usually let me stand on the stage with them. I found after a while that being a bad bass player wasn't enough, and I found out that I could take pictures of music, and that would actually support me if I paid attention to the business end of it, and let me stay near the thing I loved most. So I've kind of carved out a career that's mostly aimed at music and different aspects of culture. It starts out really, really small. You don't get the big things too often. I had a really good break about 10, 12 years ago and did the very first Norah Jones DVD, which went 22 times platinum, and then right afterwards got a Spielberg gig and Grammy nomination. It happened pretty quickly, but those large budget things don't support you day to day. And when we were talking about this forum in our faculty meeting last week, I relayed one story that I thought was kind of at the heart of what you do in the day-to-day glamour of shooting videos. By the way, in just 2 weeks, George Flanagan, I mentioned, is going to be here, one of the biggest video directors of all time. He's really, you're going to dig this guy. But in any case, the thing that keeps you going day to day when you're getting started are small things like EPKs, electronic press kits. Now they're making them for $1,000. But when music videos were really happening heavily about 10 years ago, the average budget on an EPK was on an artist. Basically, this is a piece of film that's put out before the record comes out and is sent around to the various record stores, of which there are not very many left anymore, that has a small feature about the artist, has a little performance and cuts from the new album, and has a little interview with the guy.
Today you'd see these on your own website,
yeah,
or uploaded to YouTube and Vimeo, and how many of you have an EPK?
Something like that. Anyway. In any case, this was kind of a standard thing from record companies in those days. They produced them, they pitched the record stores, who then, on the basis of the EPK, would order X number of albums, depending on how many they think they could sell. So the average budget was running about $15,000 to do one of these things, and it took about a week to 10 days to put one out, and you often had to travel to do it. When we first started out, we had to rent the gear that we were using because we didn't have as many of the prosumer cameras as are out now. We had to rent offline suites for the editing and online suites to cut the thing together. So basically, after you rent all the stuff and hire the people and do the thing, out of a $15,000 budget, you as a person or production company would make about $1,500 bucks. What we started doing was finding slightly longer gigs where it would require a rental of a camera or a rental of software. And a rental would at times be so long that would actually add up to the purchase of kind of a low-end camera. And so we convinced clients, we saved them money, we bought the cameras on their dime, they got the gig for less money because we were buying rather than renting and spending so much money, and we kept the gear. As it turns out, over a period of 6 months, we ended up with a pretty full little production suite with cameras, gear, lights, audio playback, and software to cut the thing together. And at the end of that 6-month period, we were spending for each $15,000 video about $1,500 and keeping $13,500. So basically, my whole pitch as this beginning here, because we had a lot of guys to talk, my first pitch is sometimes it really is a lot easier to use OPM, other people's money. Sometimes it's easier to start very, very small, get those nickels and dimes together, and let it build up into something that will actually make you a real living, whether it's in video or film or your production company, whatever you want to do. And that's basically my little bit of DIY to start this thing up. Johnny?
Well, you know, I never really thought about my career as anything other than just getting up and going to work. And I guess that as a musician early on and playing in bands, it was always you had to go get the gig. You always had to go get the place you wanted to play. And so I was in college, I was the leader of the band because everybody else was not. And I got the gigs, and so I was the responsible person, and I could talk to the adults, and it was kind of this my role. But we got a gig. I was always looking for something, always on the hunt, and so I wanted a job on a cruise ship, working on a cruise ship. 'Cause I thought that would be fun. I found out by going downtown to the tourist agents and all these people that only the people that owned cruise ships in those days were Norwegians and Panamanians, and they wanted their own nationals to have those jobs. So there were no jobs for American entertainment on cruise ships in those days, at least not the routine jobs. So I kept on trying, and I answered ads, an ad in the Village Voice that said wanted rock group for Caribbean tour. And I thought, well, Caribbean sounds good. And, but we weren't a rock group. We thought we were jazz guys. And I quickly found out there was no market for that. And so I answered the ad. They called us up. They wanted what they called an all-American troupe to entertain on Navy bases around the world. So the company that I contacted was Brooklyn Navy Resale Systems Office, and they supplied food, liquor, and entertainment to all the Navy clubs all over the world. So we got the gig. They came down to the college, we played for them, and we got the gig. And we started in Puerto Rico for a month, and we went to Newfoundland, Iceland. I was in Iceland when Boris Fischer played, when Bobby Fischer played Boris Spassky for the World Chess Championship. And so that was kind of interesting. And then Iceland was totally fascinating. And then we went to Scotland, submarines. You know, we went to London, and then we went all over Germany, and then all down Italy and Palermo and Sicily, Morocco, and then came up through Spain and covered some Air Force bases. And the next summer we were in Japan for 6 weeks, and then we went to Taiwan and the Philippines and Guam and Midway and Okinawa and Pearl Harbor, all the military bases, right? So we were up flying military aircraft, and we were just a band on the run. There was no doubt. We would sit in airports for 3 days waiting for a flight, and we had a great time. But in those days, bands didn't go on tours like that. There was no rock and roll tours in those days. So we're talking about the 1960s, and so it was very much a more conservative situation. But we did that, and from that I got the bug of being independent. And I figured, well, we could do anything, because we were doing anything. We were doing something that was pretty extraordinary for that period of time. And from then on, it was just you know, running the band and trying to make it happen. And from music school to law school and then into New York and working for a company. I think I worked for companies maybe 4 years of my entire career. So I started my own company when I was 27, Artist House, and we started making jazz records. And before that, I was running a little company for A&M Records, Horizon. So it was always kind of like that. And then at one point in the 80s, I had to make a decision whether I was going to go management into the executive ranks or stay in the production independent music field. Naturally, I picked the one that had no money attached to it. And you had to go out and sell your ideas as an independent music producer. You had to convince somebody with money to give you the 50K or 100K to make the record you thought that they might like. And then if you did that and made money with it, triple the money, quadruple the money, they'd let you do it again. So that's where I learned to be very creative and continually throw out ideas. And so that is a naturally entrepreneurial idea. I never heard the word entrepreneurship all through this era. I never thought that way about myself. I just thought of myself as trying to make a living. So I did produce a lot of records that way, and I'm not unhappy with that choice. And so I find that you guys are very much entrepreneurial. It's not like we even have to talk about it too much. You are going to go do the things that you want to do. So your faculty have all done that. We're not guys who hold jobs. We're guys who make jobs. So that's what we're doing. What about you, Bob?
Admiral Snyder.
Admiral?
It sounds like he's retired CIA. You've been all over the world.
Hung out with some Navy guys. That's true.
Well,
Not personally.
okay, I've been in the music business since 1964. I just put it all together. I started as a bass player, and a tuba player in a Dixieland band in Seattle, and I was 12 years old, and I made a lot of money playing with this band, and it was mostly kids with the father of two of the kids, and we played a lot. We played for thousands of people for Boeing in Seattle for conferences and what have you. But then I started my own band in high school and started playing gigs, Moose Lodge, Elks Clubs, anything you could get your hands on. And I made more money in Seattle doing it myself than the minimum wage here in New Orleans 15 years later when I came here, because Seattle was just more money. But then I went to Europe and worked over there. I have a music ed degree, so I was teaching for the Department of Defense, and then I started playing gigs with a lot of Americans and Germans there, and made a couple of records over there for other people. Came back and then worked in the Dallas area for a couple of years as a musician, and then came here teaching at Loyola in 1981. And as I guess what John was alluding to, and what even Jim was too, as a musician, you're doing a lot of different things. And that's what I've been doing most of my life. When I taught for the Department of Defense for a couple of years, the last year I just gave up playing, and it was so strange not to touch a piano for about 15 months. And then I came back to the States, and especially coming here, I started playing all the time, playing 6 nights a week many times. Jeff will attribute to that. But I also have done, I've hustled. I was very fortunate to land a job with WWL Television doing all the music for their promotion department, and then I was able to do the other TV stations as well. And I just used all the electronic gear that I have. I do a lot of electronic music, and that was a very lucrative part of my life in creating music. But again, it was hustling. Back then, there was no internet. They would have a voiceover guy do a thing in Denver, and they would fly it in the same day, and then I would do the music that night. And then in Denver also, there was a producer doing all of these AAA videos, travel logs for the Automobile Association of America. And I must have done 30 videos, the music beds for those, and they were an hour each, and I was given 7 days to create original music, and I would be doing all-nighters and trying to teach theory at 9:30 in the morning.
in that theory class.
But I would literally go to the airport out in Kenner, drop off a reel-to-reel tape back then, and send it on an airplane to Denver, and then they would do a post-production in the afternoon. And it was really an exciting time for me. But to be able to play music, to make music, to give concerts, and to teach what I've been doing is really an exciting, you know, it's 3 or 4 things. And it's really been an exciting profession for me, and just to be able to do it all. And now you have to do promotion as well. I forgot that I have a record company, and I've made, produced, and gone a couple $100,000 in debt with 27 CDs.
That's all? Not bad.
I started a record company in '95 when everybody was trying to get out. And it was the beginning of the end of what the industry was. And John, that's what he was talking about earlier too. I was taking my model after Rounder Records, which had been, they started I think in '72, and they were a very successful independent company, making lots of records here in New Orleans. They had a guy based here in New Orleans because there was a lot of musicians working in New Orleans that they were recording. And so I talked with the president of the company once when she basically said, if I was starting a record company now, I would never do what we did then. And they've been very successful. And of course, I was just starting. And so, and then when you're trying to do all of this, I didn't devote enough time to promotion, and I didn't have the money to do it. So that's one aspect. But the internet has really helped. I guess you guys already know this, but if you look historically at my own company that's now 15 or so years, I was selling CDs like this and maybe a few downloads like this. And in the last 5 years, it's 95% digital and 5%. Just the guys are selling them on the gig, and a few Amazon sales. But anyway, that's what I've done. I've made music, I play music, and I've recorded music. And it's really an exciting time. That's my spiel.
Got it.
And it's not a 4-letter word.
I think what's most relevant to the topic is probably my involvement with basically digital music and how that came about. I was DJing in high school. I quit the school band and bought turntables, and which my dad's a conductor, so he wasn't super excited about that. But the thing about it was there was no, like at that time in America, electronic music was nowhere on the radio or MTV or anything. And so everything that was happening was very much do it yourself. And that was happening, and a lot of those folks were very technically inclined. They were on the internet a lot, and they were often some of the first people to put their music online and do some things online that other people hadn't done. So through that, I kind of got exposed to a lot of what was happening in the late 90s online with music. And then in much the same way, you know, major labels were not interested in the internet by and large, but independent artists were, because they kind of had no choice. And so in the middle of last decade, there was a lot of really exciting stuff happening. And I know Billy's been involved in this, but with groups like the Future of Music Coalition in Washington, D.C., trying to kind of chart a path toward how you run your own career, which is a totally different proposition than it might have been 20 years ago or longer. So to sum it up, I think my experience that would help you guys probably revolves around digital music, how you're getting your music out there, and then I also spend a lot of time working with technology companies, and I've been doing that for a while. And so whether it's, you know, understanding how a service works, maybe some advice if you or someone you know is working on a company or idea. I mean, this is an amazing sort of sea change we're having in business and in the way people support themselves. And I think that you guys are in an amazing position to do things that, frankly, none of us had the opportunity to do when we were your age. And any way I can help to support that, I will.
Great, thanks.
I've produced a few records, but I'm not going to get up here with next to John and talk about producing records, especially free jazz records. I run the Open Ears Music Series, which has been doing Tuesday night free jazz stuff for about 5 years, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how that got started. Right after Katrina, there was this club called King Bolden's down on North Rampart Street, and on Tuesday night, he would do sort of freaky jazz night. And the guy who ran the club was a guy named Mario Madero, and he liked me for some reason. So once a month, I would get this phone call that said, hey, Jeff, what night do you want when do you want to play this month? Which was cool. I had a band, we had a gig once a month. And then Mario got shut down on some, like a crazy neighbor and some liquor license things and whatever. And then all of a sudden, we didn't have a place to play. And I say we, meaning specifically my band, but also the people who were into this type of music I was into. I've got a bunch of friends in Chicago, and there's several artist-run music series up there that are organized by musicians, and they go every week, and there's a really beautiful scene up there. So I started thinking, well, I need a gig. I guess I'm just gonna have to make a gig. And we started looking at clubs around town. I had a feeling Snug Harbor probably wasn't gonna give me one night a week to do free jazz. They give me about one night a year to do free. Anyway, so we came up with a friend of mine who's a guitar player is friends with the guy who manages the Blue Nile. And he said, oh, Jesse's into good music. You should call him up. So I called him and said, hey, I want to see if I can do a weekly improvised music gig. And he was open to it. So I called my buddy in Chicago, Josh, who runs one of the series up there. Do y'all remember Mike Reed came and talked last semester? Mike and Josh co-started this series at the Hungry Brain. And I called Josh and I said, what are some lessons that you learned starting this that, some mistakes I cannot make because you've already made them? And he said, well, there's a few things that are really important. And I think this carries to trying to do performances on any level of things that whoever runs the club might not necessarily want to hear, but that you want to play. He said, you got to do it on a night when they aren't usually making any money. Do it on a slow night. So whatever they make at the bar is gravy. It's more than they would have made otherwise. In the case of doing a series, he said, you have to be there. If you're not on the road, you have to be in the club every week. Because if it doesn't look important to you, then the guy who runs the club's not gonna think it's important. And he said the third thing, you kind of have to get lucky. You gotta get a bartender who's into it. Because the bartender's the conduit to the club. And so if the bartender complains every week, man, these jazz people don't tip and the music's weird and I got to sit through this stinking 4 hours of this noise, then it's not going to last long. Well, we got lucky. And what Josh said in relation to the Hungry Brain was, he said, we just got lucky. The first night we played, this guy, Dan, was tending the bar, and we got to the end of the night, and Dan said, I have no idea what y'all were doing, but that was really cool. And Dan's still there 10 years later. And we kind of got lucky with the Open Ears thing. There's this guy, Ollie, who tends bar for us, and he's totally into it. Because the first 2 nights, we had other bartenders, and I was thinking, okay, this thing's not going to last real long. And then we got Ollie. He's into it. It works. Now, 5 years later, I guess the club's happy. They don't kick us out. We're getting to where the musicians are making a little money. There's more people there who I don't know than people who I know, which is generally a good thing. And, we've gotten our names in Downbeat magazine a couple of times, and, some of the world's starting to notice. So that's my little history of, hey, I need a gig. How can I make this gig happen? And so that's sort of where I'm coming from on that.
And Jeff, you've also released a number of records and self-produced and self-manufactured.
Yeah, I've done some that I've done entirely myself on my own labels. And then a couple of bands that I'm in that I've produced records that have ended up getting put out on European labels and things like that. So.
And so from here, I mean, the issue for you is what is it you're trying to get done? What is it you need to get done? What is DIY to you? What are your projects that you're sort of thinking, well, I want to get this done, but I don't even know where to begin. I mean, I want to press some CDs, but I don't want to go broke, and I'm not going to do a 1,000 piece minimum. What are my options? Do I have to just copy, CDRs and sell CDRs? And, and by the way, the answer to that is no, you don't have to. Do you want real merch, or do you want dinky merch? Do you want, do you want to get your own tours booked and promoted, or do you want to struggle along making mistakes? The idea is that we are all here for whatever our range of experience is. The odds are pretty good that we've had to solve one of the problems that you're facing. I know that you're all quite a bit younger than us, and you're all very modern people. But I know for a fact that I myself have gone to John for help on things. I've had to ask Jim Gabor for things with regard to video. The fact of the matter is that there's a wealth of information here, and a lot of people who just know how to skin that cat that you're trying to skin. I wonder if you guys have anything to offer in terms of, what you consider DIY right now. I mean, you guys think predominantly about live events when you think about DIY? Do you think about self-releasing when you talk about DIY? Do you talk about creating your own merchandise? What is DIY to you? I see you nodding, Christian. What do you think when we're talking about DIY, and how do you think you all can act as resources to one another? Well, you don't have to think real fast. You just have to think of the thing you thought.
I think DIY, a lot of it, or at least here in New Orleans, is pertaining to a lot of the live show that we're seeing. And it's actually getting real, nice now. A lot of people are starting to meet each other and are starting to talk to each other.
So are you talking house shows, basement shows? Are you talking about stuff in clubs?
Any shows.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like more house shows, but I mean, they're just not really that plausible at this stage in the game, I guess.
So when a gig is at a known venue, why do you consider it DIY?
Because you're doing all your own promotion, and you're getting all your friends to tell their friends, and trying to make your little scene in that one venue at that one night happen.
I see.
Rather than trying to go through.
Yeah, you're using that's kind of what I had suspected. Like, they're using the term differently than we've used the term in the past. DIY. I
mean, do it yourself.
Well, that's right? What it means. Yes. On the nosy. But generally, that it was pulling together all the resources and functions that constituted that which a record company or an agent or someone else would do for you, and you're doing that whole range of services yourself, including merchandising, including web development, you know what I mean? The entire range of all functions of the record industry, not just the record company. So, I think there's a little bit of a lost in translation component to what you guys consider DIY in that sort of micro picture, and what we consider it on the macro level. And can you imagine? I mean, you can see why we wanted to talk to you about this, right? I mean, how many of you have to create product, and you don't want to burn money, and you don't want to burn resources? How many of you have to promote a release, and you don't want to do it in an inefficient way? You want to do it by spending the least amount of money to reach the most, the most people. And I think that between us, you guys have a lot to call on in that regard. Does anybody have any questions?
I think he made a good point, though, that it's easier, right? And you guys are all networking. You've got, look, almost 200, 300 people in here to network with, too, to help you out. I mean, when I was doing shows, it was 3x5 postcards, no internet. It was a mailing list. It was lots of stamps. It cost a lot of money to promote a show, just to do one show, a concert, say, in Roussel Hall. It cost a lot of money, and now you have the internet, and it's almost free, Right.
And you could paint the side of a dinosaur with your message as well.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, you could do that.
There's one thing that has not changed, though, and that is that it is a people business, and you get things done by having relationships with other people, and it's not going to. I don't see it going to change from that. So it's a small business. People know you. Once you make something that is of note, then they're going to pay attention. And the friends that you make now are going to be with you for a long time. I mean, it's entirely possible until you're done. Yeah. So, you want to be with that people. Yeah.
Use the word scene, which I think feeds into that. I know, at least on the open ears thing, the community aspect of it's very important in that You know, when your band like finds a club that will book you and does all this promotion and gets people to come out, then the community that starts developing around that, maybe 2 weeks later, your band does it, and then you all show up to their show. That community can be very supportive. I know I found in the improvised music scene, communities come up around the Tuesday night thing. And that spread, you know, Mike Reed comes to town, hangs out, he meets these people. One artist from Holland comes to town, and the next thing you know, I'm getting emails from famous Dutch improvisers saying, oh, can we come play your series on Tuesday night? I'm trying to explain to them, you know, we really don't have that much money. But then their government had money, so it was okay. But
Well, the other constant is going to be your need to innovate, so that you're going to have to invent a kind of product that somebody hasn't seen before, a kind of show that somebody hasn't seen before, a kind of merch that somebody hasn't seen before. If you don't innovate, you're going to die. And so you need to create new ways to do the things that other people have done for years and years before you. And the way that you're going to do that is by tapping every resource that you have at your disposal and creating a new and different thing, so that all of your gigs are events. Just like Christian was saying, you know, the gig becomes an event, so that if you don't see that gig, that particular gig, it's gone. You missed it. So that creates an incentive to come and make sure that you have a ticket to that gig.
You know, Billy, I think not only do you have to find that hook, but you can never put down the power of a single person focusing on something and making it happen. Being in Neris and watching the music videos, I see about 1,500 new high-end music videos every year. Those come down to 5 for the finals or whatever. But every year, for the last 3 years, we have found one single music video that was made for a band by one person just sitting down and focusing on it. In '09, that was this crazy guy in Montreal who made a video about a man made out of bees. In 2010, there was a guy who did cartoon cutouts with a bunny rabbit and a gun. Last year, there was this absolutely incredible piece that was done with a person's body with holes growing all in it. Every single one of them was done with just minimal funding, with one person sitting at a computer and grinding it out to make a creative, unique product for the band they loved. None of the 3 of them actually were with a record company. They were all doing it on minimal budgets. They had very limited time to do it, but they put it out, and all 3 of them got a Grammy nomination. Their careers as directors went through the roof, and the bands, all 3 of whom were just totally unknown, went through the roof. If you can find that hook, that creative hook, and stick with it and concentrate your creative juice in it, you can go somewhere.
You know, Billy, I'd like to ask Gregory to put in a historical perspective, because Greg Davis he initiated the Dirty Dozen Brass Band, and that was in the 80s, right? Give him the mic, because because what he did back then, and it's a very great success story, it's the same today, but just in a different time period and different means.
For those of you who may not know the Dirty Dozen, we got it started in the late 70s, in the spring of 1977. And we started out really just as a rehearsal band because at that time, disco was happening. Disco was king. Every Bourbon Street had turned to disco, and right after disco, it went to country western. So we were just looking for an opportunity to rehearse, to learn some music. And what we found at that time was there was an interest in having a brass band to come out and play those second lines on Sunday and play parties and funerals and picnics and all that kind of stuff. And so we weren't necessarily getting into it for the money. We just wanted an opportunity to play. Now, at the same time that was going on, I was a student here at Loyola, so I was being exposed to new music. New music to me at that time was modern jazz, and I had heard modern jazz at the time, but I never really played anything like that. I came up playing in the R&B and funk bands that were happening in the 70s. So anyway, we got the Dirty Dozen started. I didn't realize, and I'm sure the other guys didn't realize that there would be a demand for it. So we started playing the parties, picnics, funerals, parades. And then that led to us getting into the book by the convention business here. And then what we found then was that we were working 5 to 6 days a week, sometimes doing 2 to 3 gigs per day, most of it doing conventions. But what really got the band developed was playing in the small black nightclubs here in the city a couple of nights a week. That allowed us to gel as a band. And we went from playing almost every day here in New Orleans to taking it on the road nationally, then internationally. For me, I did not want to just be a brass band that marched and played parades in the street. So I realized then to get to another level, I had to start making deals. And the deal was, okay, we'll come play the festival and we'll give you the parade, either marching in on the stage or marching out at the end, but you have to give me 20 minutes of my time on the stage. Give me 30 minutes of my time on the stage. And then that slowly developed into us, becoming a stage act. And from about 1979 to 80, we went from doing gigs just here in New Orleans to doing probably about 180 to 200 shows worldwide. And I just returned a couple of days ago from a summer tour that went from about right after Jazz Fest up until a couple of days ago. I had some days off in between, but we literally did a city a day for the better part of the summer, and we just finished that. Now, the thing that fascinated me more than playing was the actual booking of the gigs. Since I led the band for the most part, I got to deal with the promoters and the buyers, and I always saw the promoters and the buyers driving up in the Mercedes and the Rolls Royces, and the musicians were always coming on a bus. So I said, I want to do that. So I got into booking bands in 1990. I was a student here at Loyola, and I left in '79, started traveling with the Dirty Dozen, and before I realized what had happened, it was 1999. And so I decided I wanted to come back to school and finish up my degree program. I was in music education, and I think I finished in 2001, then started working up here in 2003. Whenever John came is when, yeah. So maybe I came the year before. I came and started working up here. But the other thing that I got into was booking Jazz Fest, booking music for the Saints games. I was booking music for the Essence Festival. I was booking music. There was a club in the Trade Center. I booked that. I was booking music for the Emeralds Foundation. I started up another company where I was booking private stuff. Right now, I still book some of the entertainment, a lot of entertainment over at Harrah's, and various other casinos and other things like that. But I had become an entrepreneur and I didn't know it because I was just involved in so many other things other than just playing music that for a while I stopped playing music because I was very busy doing the other things. The other things I really enjoyed doing, but at some point a couple of years ago, some of the other stuff started, after Katrina, some of the other things that I was doing started to fade away. So I started playing and traveling again. And I found that playing music, playing live is really my first love, but the money-making thing for me is actually booking events.
But Gregory, what was the number one thing that caused you to get all that business? I mean, was it organization? Was it trust? Was it relationships with people that, I mean, what was it?
The thing that I found that helped the band get as much work as we did get was just the personal relationship that I was able to develop with the buyers. Even today, I don't mind sending emails or, replying to them, but I prefer talking to somebody, talking to a person on the other end of the line, or meeting somebody in person, rather than just sending an email. A lot of things that I book, right now, for instance, I was called contacted a couple of weeks ago by a woman who wanted music at her wedding. Now, she, of course, she started telling me about they spent $20,000 on the food. The hall cost them $2,000. The liquor cost them X number of dollars. But she wanted to spend about $700 on the music. And I said, well, I can't help you. And then eventually I got her to see that she needed to spend more money on the music. But I found that, I believe that had I not been able to have that conversation with her, she would not have, changed her mind a little bit. I didn't change her mind too much. Got to spend maybe $1,500, which is still not enough. But a lot of times people will want to spend the money on other things and not the music. So I find that the personal relationship is the thing that works best.
So what kind of car do you drive?
One with 4 wheels.
All right. Well, we're out of time. I think this is about what I wanted to communicate to you guys, is that you have people around you that you can go to. When you have issues, you need things to you need to fill in the blanks. Make sure you know that you can come and talk to us. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.